Funding for Schaefer-Ellis is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Over the course of the past year, I've become obsessed with Ace Attorney. I mean, I played the original trilogy a few years back and loved it, but my love for it then is nothing compared to my series as a whole enjoyment that blossomed in 2024. Mainly thanks to the stellar re-releases of the Apollo Justice trilogy and Investigations duology. Also, I played the Layton game for completion's sake. It cost like $120. Why did I do this? Anyway, my obsession really came across on Twitter throughout last year. But aside from sneakily incorporating Ace Attorney into a video on whether Far Far Away Idol is canon to the Shrek timeline, I haven't made a dedicated Ace Attorney video on this channel until now. I really want to rank every single case and every single character in one video. But also, that sounds like an insane, daunting task, and I'm already up to my eyeballs in an insane, daunting task with that Pikmin treasure ranking. But then I realized, hey, my ranking of every Disney animated movie wasn't built in a day. I started out ranking a handful of Disney movies by decade. The Disney Renaissance, the 2000s, the 2010s. Why don't I just apply the same logic to Ace Attorney cases? And open up this saga of me talking about the series with a ranking of the opening cases for all 11 games. Then after that, I can do second cases, then third cases, and then I'll probably just save all the remaining cases after that for the big video that ranks everything. I mean, how am I supposed to compare fourth cases when some of them are the finale to their games and others are turnabout storyteller? Anyway, that's a bridge to the turnabout we'll cross when we get there. Today, it's all about the starter cases. The short and simple ones meant to give you a tutorial on how to perform your lawyerly duties, and oftentimes get you intrigued about the overarching story the game may or may not have. The best thing an opening case can be is an intriguing hook that makes you not want to put the game down. But at the same time, the case should be succinct. Not excessively succinct to the point where it only lasts like half an hour, but the worst thing a first case can do is drag. That's kind of the worst thing any Ace Attorney case can do. But it's doubly egregious with the first cases where you're stuck in the courtroom the entire time, and you just want to stretch your legs a bit and get into a deeper case with investigations to vary up the gameplay. Get them hooked and then get them out of here. That's the best way to go about a first case in my opinion. Unfortunately, most first cases are generally pretty average. That's to be expected, I suppose. It's not a good idea to play all your best cards right at the start. But yeah, unfortunately, most Ace Attorney games get off to fine but forgettable starts. I wouldn't call too many of these first cases bad. In fact, there are a few more that I call genuinely good. But the average for them is average. So let's take a look at why that is now. Oh, and one more thing. I'm gonna be avoiding spoilers for any case that doesn't immediately tell you who the culprit is in the opening. This is a completely spoiler-free video, aside from some vague allusions to what the culprit does, without me outright naming them. If you've never played any of these games before, you should be fine. Alright, let's get this trial started.
Disappointment in the game of life!
The first turnabout, more like the worst first turnabout. Yeah, I'm sorry, but from a critical perspective, this case kind of sucks ass. I obviously have very fond nostalgic memories of it, and I wanted to give it a little bit of leeway for being the first case in all of Ace Attorney. But damn, what is this, a baby game? For some reason, the Ace Attorney devs have this asinine idea that you can jump into the series with any game. Which, that's a whole other can of worms we're not going to get into. But because that's their official stance, the first turnabout does not necessarily have to be the first case you play in the entire series in general. You could potentially start with a game that features an actually good and interesting first case that lasts longer than 30 minutes. By the way, that's not an endorsement. You should start with the first game if you've never played any of them before. Anyway though, if the other starter cases felt as minuscule as this one, I would definitely give it a lot more leeway. But unfortunately, it's kind of extremely hard to give this one any credit whatsoever, aside from it just being the foundation that every other case built upon. It's like Super Mario Kart. I respect it, but I was honestly bored from going back to it. Okay, let me phrase my indifference to this case in a more positive manner. The first turnabout is adorable. It's really cute how simple and undetailed the writing is. It's funny how every single contradiction might as well have a neon sign attached in your court record, blatantly screaming at you what the evidence you need to present is. I can't even give this case too much credit for its characters, because aside from it being kinda funny how nervous and unprepared Phoenix is, on top of a little backstory tease of him and Larry's friendship, we really don't get too much out of these guys. Phoenix is okay here, but I don't really get much attachment to Mia out of this. Larry isn't really that funny here. The judge and Winston Payne are completely stiff and humorless. Honestly, Frank Sawit is kind of the best character in this case, and he's not even all that. His animations are just pretty funny, especially the epic toupee throw. That's a great indication of the wackiness to come in the rest of the game. Overall, it's not a drag. It definitely doesn't overstay its welcome, which is a huge problem in the worst Ace Attorney cases, but it just isn't much of anything, really. It's as tutorial as tutorials come. And while you can say that about other first cases, they still manage to be a lot more involved with a lot more intricate characters and plots. Here, Frank Sawit is just some random burglar who killed this lady because he was caught in the act. Riveting. The thinker clock is pretty cool, and the time zone difference is a nice explanation for things. And this case is a nice way to give you some instant gratification before throwing you into the more involved cases to follow. But yeah, overall, this case doesn't exactly hold up. It's pretty lame. I'm not gonna act like it needed to be some grand masterclass in first cases, considering this is the literal first Ace Attorney case ever written. But at the same time, I can't use that as an excuse to rank it higher than it ultimately deserves. Sorry, First Turnabout. Frank Sawit was better in that one Investigations 2 case.
Step into my office.
I'm gonna be honest, you guys, I almost forgot about Investigations 1 when thinking of all the first cases in the series. You might assume that's just because it's a spin-off, but like, I remembered Investigation 2's first case, so, you know. Replaying Turnabout Visitor for this video, at first, it kinda just felt like the absolute average for cases in this series. Like, nothing about it really stood out to me in a positive or negative way. And then it just keeps going towards the end. Not to the same drastic extent as a certain other first case we'll talk about very soon, but let's just say I was ready for Jacques over here to shut the fuck up after testimony number 2. I really don't dislike Investigations 1. It's a solid enough game, but man does it not know how to vary up its gameplay. The entire ending sequence is nothing but testimony after testimony from Sportsman, and since he's the only guy you interrogate in this entire case, I was already a little tired of him before this barrage of 4 different cross-examinations with him. He's not a bad character or anything, but he's not a great one either, which results in him really overstaying his welcome. At least he do be ballin' though. Aside from that annoyance, Turnabout Visitor is pretty forgettable. It's a fine setup with there being a murder and potential theft in Edgeworth's office, and you having to defend both Dick Gumshoe and Maggie Bird from suspicion. I think this was a solid enough way to introduce the Investigations game's unique gameplay loop compared to a typical Ace Attorney joint. I like seeing where Maggie ended up after the original trilogy, and her general incompetence is pretty funny. Checking the Steel Samurai statue in Edgeworth's office and hearing him ramble about Steel Samurai lore is very fun as well. Miwen Pikmin. And I guess now would be a great time to mention that Edgeworth and Gumshoe are 2 of my favorite characters in the whole series, and their dynamic specifically is one of my all-time favorites as well. Really, any time spent with my 2 lovable goofballs is a delight. But ignoring that and just focusing on the case itself, it's pretty standard without inspiring too much interest in me whatsoever. And eventually, I get really sick of it. Not as sick as I get of certain other cases in this game, but it's undeniable that this case's pacing issues are a precursor of what's to come later on. Oh, banana. I've seen a lot of hatred for the Lost Turnabout, with quite a few people ranking it as the absolute worst case in the series. And like, really? This? Yeah, it's not great or anything worth writing home about, but the worst case ever? To me, the worst case in Ace Attorney should be something that's so drawn out and tedious that it makes you want to die. The Lost Turnabout to me is fine but forgettable, and the few contentious elements that it has aren't really things that bother me too much. Like, okay, people rag on this case for giving Phoenix amnesia as a way of justifying the fact that he needs to relearn all the tutorials we already went through in the first game. Yeah, I get it. Amnesia is an often annoying plot device in video games, but I'm gonna be honest, you guys, it really isn't that bad here. Even though his memory doesn't fully return until the end of the case, he's basically back to his old self really quickly, to the point where the amnesia becomes less of an annoyance hindering the entire case, and more of just a cute temporary plot development. The other issue I've seen a lot of people take with this case is the culprit, Richard Wellington. Oh, he's a complete moron. Oh, he's lame. Oh, he's the absolute worst character in Ace Attorney. Guys, again, I don't know what you're smoking if you think that. Like, he's really just kind of average. I, for one, think it's funny to make the culprit of a game's first case a complete idiot who mistakes a yellow baseball glove for a bunch of bananas and grabs the wrong cell phone when trying to steal it back from you. The stakes are not high at all right now, so why shouldn't we get a dumbass goofball as our first opponent? I think he's kind of funny. His animations gave me a chuckle, and while he does do that whole windy old bag shtick of talking really fast that kind of gets old the more you see it, I don't know. Overall, he's really not an awful starter culprit. Aside from that, I like Maggie enough, and it's cute how she kind of becomes your Maya for the first half of the case until the real Maya arrives. Fun fact, excluding the Layton crossover, this is actually the only first case in the series where Maya appears. Like, huh. It's nice to see Gumshoe right at the start. Payne is a much more fleshed out and fun character than he was in the first game's starter case. And there's a ton of funny moments, like accusing Wellington of liking big bananas, exchanging business cards with the judge, and regaining your memory of every single character in the courtroom except for Payne. I don't know, man. I think there's more than enough to rank this case above the first turnabout. It just feels way better fleshed out and weirdly serves as a better introduction. Slightly awkward amnesia development notwithstanding. Pretty average in the grand scheme of the series, but wildly overhated for sure.
6.5 hours later.
I absolutely hated the Adventure of the Great Departure the first time I played it. Like I said, the worst thing an Ace Attorney case can do, in my opinion, is go on for too long. And this is especially true for the intro case. Getting the pacing right is important since you need to hook the player in, while also not making them wait too long to get the gratification of solving their first mystery. And for the past 4 years or so since I first played Great Ace Attorney 1, this case has been the poster child in my mind for agonizingly drawn out first cases. It left a terrible first impression on me. I was dreading reliving it for this video. And now that I've finally replayed it, damn, it was actually really good until it went on for too long. I feel like if you ended it after part 2, or kept part 3 in, but took out the duo of Baby General and Weird Old Guy, which, by the way, does anyone think these two look like Skyward Sword NPCs? I swear, this is the exact way that game's characters were designed. Anyway, just a little subtraction would have made this one of the best intro cases. It's an intriguing mystery, having you insist on the existence of a phantom woman no one else will admit is real, learning about a deadly poison with some of the most terrifying effects I've ever seen, and bonding with your buddy Kazuma in some of the most delightfully homoerotic courtroom shenanigans we've seen since Phoenix and Miles first went at it. There really is a lot of good stuff to this case. I haven't even mentioned how novel it is that Payne's ancestor actually seems successful, being a prosecutor on the Japanese Supreme Court and all. And this case especially makes Ryunosuke feel like the biggest novice you ever play as in a courtroom, since he's not a lawyer at all. But slowly watching him learn how everything in the courtroom works as the trial goes on is super cool and rewarding in a way no other first case is. It's easily the best growth exhibited by the main character in a tutorial case. This case also does a great job of orienting you in the setting and displaying how racist British people are to the Japanese, a major recurring theme throughout the rest of the duology. God, you know this culprit was so good, but then they made her racist for some reason. I don't know why the hell they would do that. It was just for some random, non-thematic reason. Oh, darn it. Anyway, I've been a little mean to this case for the past 4 years. It has a lot more going for it than most other first cases, and it's actually pretty well paced. Until part 2 leads into another to be continued. I was honestly on board with everything in this replay so far, but that's the moment where I finally said, okay, let's wrap this up. And then it just kept going. Oh my god, it was pure agony. First cases should not go on this long. It's justified in other cases since you break up the trials with investigations. But here, having to spend nearly 4 hours in the same location with the same culprit who we know is guilty, but it takes goddamn forever to actually prove it, all as Ouchie continues to fawn over her. Oh my god, I just wanted to punch him in his stupid face. And just when you think it's almost over for real this time, then we bring back the Skyward Sword NPCs? Are you kidding me? Overall, I definitely wouldn't consider this to be a bad trial. It's got way too many good elements for me to say that. It's just so damn tedious after a while. I hope the second case in this game is better. Spoilers for my next ranking, it's not.
I'll be your guide.
The foreign turnabout is a bit more in-depth than a typical Ace Attorney starter case, with this being both a blessing and a curse. Instead of throwing you straight into a trial like every other mainline game, this one elects to introduce the new Kingdom of Khura'in, where you spend half the game. You get to form a bit of an attachment with soon-to-be defendants I'll be your guide. Guess what his occupation is. Additionally, once we actually get to court, we really take our time getting entrenched in the bizarro court system this country has in place, where lawyers are universally reviled, trials end almost instantaneously with no chance for the defense, and Gaspin Payne inexplicably is successful at his job. On my first playthrough, I was really engrossed in this case because of how new this all felt compared to every other starter case in the series. I mean, okay, the judge in Khura'in is kind of just an exact copy of the judge we all know and love, and Gaspin Payne is here too, which, yeah, we'll get to him. But other than that, this feels drastically different from any other starter case because of the hostility you feel from all sides and the incredibly high stakes. Due to the Defense Culpability Act, if Phoenix can't prove all be innocent, both of them will be executed. That's how it is in Khura'in. A lawyer who defends a client found guilty will get that same sentence. Fun fact, when I was a kid, I thought that's how the law actually worked all the time. I thought if you say someone is innocent and it turns out they're guilty, then you were helping them, so you're guilty too. Turns out Khura'in operates on a law straight out of my 8-year-old brain. Anyway, I really feel the tension in the air as a result, and I didn't mind how long-winded the build-up was to the actual gameplay, since this is a lot to drop on us all at once. But replaying the case for this ranking, I feel like a lot of this could be condensed. It takes forever to actually get the case moving, not only due to all this exposition, but also the lengthy tutorial for the new divination seance gimmick. Now, I think this is a really cool gimmick, letting you view the victim's final moments and desperately trying to pick out contradictions in what is basically the most blatant evidence of what really happened you've ever had to deal with. It's a fantastic mechanic that sadly doesn't really feel satisfying here because they hold your hand through most of it. I know it's by far one of the most complex mechanics in Ace Attorney, but the game is so focused on explaining it that it doesn't really get time to shine within the context of this case. All of these elements add up to bloat a case that, on paper, really isn't that much more complex than a typical first case. It just feels like the foreign turnabout overstays its welcome by the time its culprit starts dropping his facade. Speaking of which, this might be a hot take, but I really do love this culprit. Peace, love, and understanding. I think his musical gimmick is pretty funny, and he probably has the best breakdown of any first culprit. But eventually, I get tired of dealing with even him, as well as the hostile attitude of the Peanut Gallery. They started out intimidating, but just kind of became annoying after a while. Nothing in this case annoys me more, however, than Gaspin Payne. They really flanderized him way too much. Like, instead of just being a cocky but bumbling buffoon, now he actively goads Phoenix into taking the case because he wants Phoenix to be murdered for humiliating him in court. This just doesn't seem right. I don't know. I can't imagine Gaspin Payne acting quite so callous and evil. And it makes his whole shtick a lot less fun. Really, what are the odds that a damn Payne weaseled his way into the Khura'in court system anyway? Couldn't we have gotten a new prosecutor for this case? It kind of goes against the whole brand new location for the series concept when we still have the same prosecutor and basically the same judge. Murderous Payne wouldn't even have been that bad if it just didn't go on forever and get really old. On the more positive end of things, I really like this clip of him saying, "Yeah!" That's something at least. At its core, this is a fine enough case. It has a fun culprit, a sympathetic defendant, it introduces you to Khura'in pretty well, and it has a couple solid surprises. But it really drags after a while, which isn't something you want your first case to do. Not awful, but it's one of the few tutorial cases where it feels like a tutorial, and that's not a great thing.
Alright, I'm officially calling this countdown to a recess because my grandson is going to tell you all about Squarespace now.
Squarespace is a wonderful online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. I adore how easy they make it to showcase your expertise and engage clients with video content on your website. You can make stunning video libraries and even monetize your content by adding a paywall. Perfect for online courses, exclusive tutorials, and premium workshops. If you want to get discovered fast, that's where integrated Squarespace SEO tools come in. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, letting you pop up more often on search engines and attract way more customers. Squarespace also offers lots of built-in donation tools. You can create a professional, on-brand website that makes it easy to accept one-time or recurring contributions, and engage your supporters. Use built-in email campaigns and marketing tools to connect with your community and inspire more people to support your cause. Check out squarespace.com/ShaeFrillis for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use promo code ShaeFrillis to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
A bomb? In the Krusty Krab!
Fun fact! Turnabout Countdown is the first ever Ace Attorney case I ever played. Yeah, I completely forgot, but when I was like 16, I actually bought Dual Destinies on my 3DS and gave it a try as my first ever Ace Attorney experience. I beat the case and had a lot of fun, but then I just never played the rest of the game because I forgot. Oops. Anyway, fuzzy nostalgic memories aside, Turnabout Countdown is technically a first case, despite being the 4.5th case in Dual Destinies chronologically. It maybe overstays its welcome a bit, but not nearly to the same extent as Visitor, because there are at least 2 people you cross-examine instead of just 1. It's also a tad better than Foreign, because the first half isn't bogged down by extensive tutorials and exposition. Overall, it's a fine introductory case, with a lot of really cool and exciting elements that don't quite coalesce into something all that memorable. Basically, this case centers around a courthouse bombing, yet another tragic indication of the dark age of the law that we all live in. The culprit, Ted Tenate, may have caused some severe property damage in the process of covering up the murder he committed, but hey, the ends always justify the means after all. Overall, the bomb stuff is very exciting and cool for a first case. I mean, the law doesn't get much more dark ager than a guy literally threatening to blow up the courtroom unless they let him escape. Despite having some cool moments though, I feel like this case and its culprit don't quite do it for me fully. Ted is just a little bit too over the top, and he's starting to border on parody Ace Attorney character. At the very least, it doesn't feel like he should be the culprit of a first case. I also think it's ridiculous that nobody suspects him, but everyone thinks the most innocent looking girl alive is the one who rigged the bomb. I know we shouldn't judge an innocent looking book by its cover in this series, but I mean, like, come on, look at her. Additionally, I think it really speaks volumes that Athena gets to start this case out on her own, and then she barely gets to do anything before Phoenix comes in and basically takes over the entire case. Man. At least we do get our first mood matrix segment here. And oh my god, this is one of my favorite gimmicks in the whole series. I don't know why, but it is so fun to me. The colors light up and that stimulates my brain. But no, it really is so fun to have to pick out an inconsistent emotion. It complements looking for inconsistent testimonies so nicely. Overall, this is a solid enough and foreboding case. It just goes on a little too long, with a villain who might be a little too over the top, even for Ace Attorney. Oh, and the one part where you have to point out the tread marks from the bomb card going over Apollo's bandages pisses me off. That might be the hardest thing in any first case in Ace Attorney. Please tell me I'm not the only one who is stumped on that for a really long time.
Hope he doesn't see right through me.
The adventure of the Blossoming Attorney is thankfully a hell of a lot shorter than the first Great Ace Attorney's opening case. And yet, it's less interesting. God, these games cannot catch a break with their openings. It certainly isn't a bad case, but it is very average. They don't immediately reveal who the killer is like a lot of first cases do, so I'm not going to dock points for the fact that it's pretty obvious who it is once you see them. However, part of the fun in first cases is figuring out how they did what they did. But this might be one of the most obvious methods to figure out in the entire series. Like, as soon as I saw that pen had an empty compartment, I pieced together exactly what happens. And the fact that the game saves this reveal for the very end, it's like, yeah, I'm way ahead of you on that one. This is kind of just a minor complaint though. I think the bigger problem at hand here is just how standard this case feels. The stakes don't feel nearly as high as the first Great Ace Attorney's first case. We have to defend Susato's friend, who we literally just met, who was never mentioned before this. On top of that, Sosuke is here, and yeah, I don't think I'm a Sosuke fan, unfortunately. It is pretty novel that we play as Susato in this case, who has to disguise herself as a man in order to serve in court. But really, that barely ends up playing a factor in the case. No one suspects her of being a woman. Hell, even the judge knew it was her the whole time, but didn't care. And on top of that, since she's been a judicial assistant the whole time, she knows the law in the courtroom pretty well, and it isn't as engaging as watching Ryunosuke slowly but surely become a more confident attorney over the course of the trial. I'm not saying these elements involving Susato are bad, I'm just saying they don't really change anything or stick out as much as they could. With that said, this case really picks up towards the end when we find out the culprit's motive for killing the defendant. And it's kind of based, actually. The victim in this case is so damn unlikable. So to have the culprit flat out express his intense frustrations at the lack of consequences they received, yeah, you can see where he's coming from, taking matters into his own hands like that. Learning about his motivations is what elevates this into a slightly above average case. And I mean, I kinda have to rank it higher than Greatest Attorney 1's first case, cause it knows when the hell it should end. Even Ouchie doesn't overstay his welcome here. I like his newfound confidence, and that scene at the end with him is hilarious. With all that said though, I overall found myself more hooked by the mystery, stakes, and characters of the Great Ace Attorney 1's opening case. If only that one knew when to shut up.
Awesome! We're not finished!
Well, this was kind of a surprise. Tallying up my thoughts on each starter case in the series, I'm honestly shocked one of the better ones came from Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. That's pretty wild considering how a lot of people don't even count this one as a real Ace Attorney game. I completely agree with the general consensus that it is a Layton game first and foremost, with Ace Attorney sprinkled on top. But with that said, it does have trials, and one of those trials is a first one, even if the game starts out with a Layton segment. I don't know, this still counts to me, and I'm glad it does, because this honestly engaged me a lot more than most first cases in the series. Layton games are a lot more mystery-centric than Ace Attorney, which is saying something because Ace Attorney is a very mystery-centric series as well. But here, your client, Espella Cantabella, seems to be lobotomized. She shows absolutely no emotion or character whatsoever. And the crazy thing is, she also never does for the rest of the game. Anyway, her mentor insists that you accept the guilty verdict. A first for one of these first cases. It really puts you on alert, wondering what conspiracy could be behind Espella's odd state, and Darklaw's unnerving machinations. Another first for a first case is the fact that no one actually died. The victim was just allegedly assaulted by Espella, which makes for some cool new dynamics when you encounter her in the courtroom. Speaking of which, both Olivia Al Dente and Johnny Smiles are fantastic witnesses, with a ton of character. And I love how Johnny makes a decision that just throws the entire case on its head and everyone in it for a loop. That's pretty funny. I really wish these two could have been part of a longer case, honestly. I would have loved to see more of them. Thankfully, this case is well paced without overstaying its welcome. It's obviously very simple, like most first cases are. Nothing too crazy or extremely memorable here. This is the first time we get to see how bad the 3D model of Phoenix looks in this game, so that's something. The prosecutor is also the dollar store British version of Pain. I guess I should say the pound store version of Pain. So yeah, he might be the most forgettable prosecutor in the entire series. Even the judge here might be the most forgettable judge in the whole series. Britain is weird. But overall, this one doesn't really frustrate or bore me at any point, like the vast majority of first cases do in this series. Between Olivia frantically chopping at an eel, Johnny's love of chocolate bars being actually relevant, the British version of the blue badger playing a part, and Maya whacking Phoenix over the head with a metal pipe. Yeah, this is actually a pretty solid first case that gets me very interested in seeing what's to come in the rest of the game. Not bad for the only Ace Attorney game in existence that refuses to get released on modern platforms.
I didn't kill this guy! I kinda did.
Oh, Mia, my hemorrhoids. Oh my god, my hemorrhoids are acting up, Mia. Make it stop. The crazy thing about Turnabout Memories is that it's easily one of the best starter cases in the series, in spite of Marvin Grossberg's urgent medical issues. This really feels like the first one they actually nailed. Not just giving you a forgettable one-off tutorial, but presenting you with an intriguing mystery that actually gets built upon later in the game. Of course, I'm not going to spoil any of that for you right now. I'm not even going to spoil the culprit here, just in case. This is one of the few starter cases where it isn't immediately revealed after all. So if you've never given these games a go and you're still inexplicably watching this video, I wouldn't want to be the one to spill the beans to you. Just know that their manipulations are immediately apparent and exposing their lies is extra satisfying as a result. This case also does a great job of hooking you right away, considering you're playing as Mia in a flashback case for a change. And your client is Phoenix Wright? What? Having to defend the legendary lawyer back when he was just a little piss baby shitting and pooping his pants is a really fun twist. I like the scene where he just eats crucial evidence. He's such a boy failure. Oh my god, this is such a fun side of Phoenix we never fully see in the present. He's also just so weak and pathetic in a way that Larry Butts and Maggie Bird aren't, with all those elements combining to make him the most enticing starter client in the entire original trilogy. I genuinely cared about him and wanted to see Mia help him, regardless of the connection I know they would end up having later in the timeline. Additionally, this just feels like the most fully featured case of the original trilogy. Not just offering a solid mystery to find all the pieces of, but presenting you with really intriguing mystery bits for future cases to follow up on. What was the incident 8 months ago? Who the hell is Diego Armando? What did the culprit do to him? What is Mia's history with the culprit, and what happened in that first case that traumatized her so badly? Too many intriguing mystery bits to count, with this one being both satisfying on its own and as a piece of the larger picture in this game. Is it the best first case ever? Well, obviously not. I feel like while it's a more than solid basis for the rest of the game's overarching story, a lot of the details of the murder here aren't anything too crazy. And even though I'm not outright saying who the killer is, I mean, it's extremely easy to figure out. Not a huge deal or anything, but it almost didn't really need to be built up like how it was. Pretty simple in the grand scheme of every case in the series, but it definitely blows most starter cases out of the water. Oh, and Winston Payne is pretty good in this. I like how cocky he is since he's supposed to be in his prime, and his extra condescension towards Mia in particular is worth noting. OMG Winston Payne misogyny arc? So yeah, overall, pretty good case considering it has lines like, "My hemorrhoids are doing the Harlem Shake," and "We know whose milkshake brings all the boys to the yard." Guys, you have to believe me, this is one of the best written video games I've ever played in my life. Just ignore those. Or alternatively, maybe those lines are the reason why. You don't know.
Donald Trump, I should have known it was you.
I bet a lot of you expected this one to be number one. I really do get the appeal with Turnabout Trump. One of the most shocking and explosive first cases in all of Ace Attorney. But at the same time, I feel like maybe the hype with this one is a little bit overblown. Like, at the end of the day, it's still a first case, you guys. It can only do so much while trapped in the constraints of being a first case. And yet, I've seen this one ranked unreasonably high on a lot of people's rankings of every case in the series. I saw one video in particular that ranked it as the number 2 best case out of every case ever. Huh? Like, that's a harmless opinion and whatever, you're completely free to have it, but also, huh? To me, this is a really good and intriguing hook to start a game with. But there's one thing about it that always struck me as bizarre. Let's start with the good first. First of all, this case is great at just throwing you into the deep end of this bizarro reality, where your client accused of murder is Phoenix Wright, who is inexplicably a piano player and hasn't practiced law for 7 years since getting disbarred, and also he has a daughter? What is happening? I didn't fully appreciate just how crazy getting all this info at once is on my first sitting. A lot of people take issue with how Phoenix hijacks the plot of Apollo Justice from Apollo Justice himself. And while he does really steal the show here, I honestly kind of like it. The way a complete novice like Apollo finds himself inexplicably caught in a 7-year-long feud between 2 legal masterminds, it's pretty crazy, and you're constantly on edge once you realize this isn't going the same way every other first case goes. Once again, I'm not going to spoil the culprit just in case, even though it is really hard to talk about this case without talking about the culprit. But I will say that this case is so good at playing with your expectations. Even Turnabout Memories, where they don't reveal the culprit right away. I mean, it's pretty obvious to figure out who it is just based on the conventions of Ace Attorney first cases. There are only so many characters, and it seems like it's gonna go the same way as every other one, which is what makes that blind side so damn satisfying and cool. I also want to mention for the record, and this is really, really dumb, but initially when I first played the case, I didn't really care about the nitty-gritty details of it solely because I have never played poker and don't know poker rules, so it was very hard for me to get invested in a poker game. And yet, now that I've played over 100 hours of Balatro, suddenly I am so poker and card-pilled that I was actually engaged by the poker discussion here. So yeah, the case actually got better for me because of Balatro. I don't know if that's something I should really be taking into consideration, but there you go. Anyway though, I think the one thing that kind of holds this case back a little bit for me is, ironically enough, the culprit. A good twist, an amazing character. But I hesitate to call it an amazing twist because we don't really know that much about them at this point. It makes it a little bit uncomfortable when you figure out who it is, but also for a first-time player, we haven't really formed a connection with this character at all since we just met them. I kind of wonder what it would be like if this was the second case. If we just got one normal one to start out and get to know this person, then maybe it would have been an even wilder reveal. But at the same time, starting with a case with this many moving parts is pretty wild, and that's the appeal for a lot of people. Even so, part of me can't help but feel like this is the game's climax. Like, this is the culmination of everything the past 7 years have built up to, and now it's just mostly over right at the start. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people do tend to say this is where the game peaks. But as someone who actually likes Turnabout Succession a lot, I disagree. Ah well, that's a conversation for another video. Point is, this is a great opening case. Easily one of the best. But at the same time, I think it's a little absurd how much people praise it when it's still pretty simple gameplay-wise, and its big twist isn't nearly as earth-shattering as some others that benefit from a hell of a lot more build-up. I do really like it though. Thanks, Balatro! Yeah, this wasn't really a contest. My favorite first case in the series by far is the one in Investigations 2. Turnabout Traeger. Yeah, I played the new official localization first, so that's the names I know everyone by. I'm sorry, I'm gonna call them by their official names, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, this case is far and away the most exciting and fun first case. Aside from Turnabout Trump, it's the only one that I feel can really stand toe-to-toe with the other cases in its game. Partially because the events here are hugely important for plot developments in future cases, but also because it's just a super engaging and satisfying case to complete in its own right. What's more interesting than having to solve a murder? Having to solve the attempted assassination of a president and a murder. This case is so good at keeping you guessing in terms of who the culprit is and what's even going on, which isn't something a lot of first cases can say. The new characters, from the overeager disciple of Lada, Tabby Lloyd, to the cool as hell gunslinging bodyguard Bronco Knight, are instantly enjoyable and memorable additions. And that's on top of the return of Shelly the motherfucking killer? As soon as he walked into frame, I gasped. What is an infamous, deadly assassin from a high-stakes final case in the original trilogy doing in the first damn case of this one? His presence alone makes this one of the most tense cases as you try in vain to deduce what his possible motive could be. And even when he's out of the picture, the mystery in this case is still so satisfying to unravel. And then you get to the mystery on top of the mystery. Oh my god, it's so good! And not only is the story gripping and the characters fantastic, but the setting is immaculate. Investigating Gourd Lake after the shooting, as well as the president's personal plane, is a lot more interesting than Edgeworth's office and the hallway outside Edgeworth's office, if you ask me. Speaking of which, how did I dislike Turnabout Visitor so much, but come to love this case when they're both starter investigations cases? It's pretty simple, really. Instead of interrogating just one person, you interrogate 4. That sounds like a recipe for bloated pacing in a case that would go on too long. But it's miraculously not. I never felt like this case was overstaying its welcome, and a lot of that has to do with the brand new mechanics they introduce. Not just regular cross-examination, but logic chess. A great twist on the formula that you get to do twice in this case. It also ties in super well with the chess motif the characters in the case have got going on. Now, is this case perfect? I mean, obviously not. I feel like despite the mystery being very intriguing, the actual questions the case asks you to answer are pretty damn easy, even by first case standards. I'll never get over the fact that Edgeworth doesn't immediately realize that there is a laser pointed at the president's forehead. Like, I didn't think the answer to what's the difference between these two pictures of the president was the fact that on one of them he doesn't have a laser on his forehead. I thought anyone with a brain could figure that out, but apparently these guys think it's a birthmark. But hey, at least the president makes a "This is Sparta" reference. You, sir, just won the internet for today. Anyway, I'd love to go in a little more detail, but this is one of those rare first cases where there's a lot of actual stuff to spoil. So I won't. Just know that this is an amazing start to one of the greatest Ace Attorney games ever made, and easily my pick for the best first case in all of Ace Attorney. Alright, I guess next up is all the second cases. That's gonna take me a lot longer to play through all of them again than the first cases did, so see you in a while. Good night, Japanifornia.